The Transfiguration. It's one of the most incredible, most spectacular moments in the Gospels, right? A truly dazzling display of divine glory. But what if I told you that brilliant, blinding light isn't actually the main point? In this explainer, we're going to decode the hidden clues in this story to get to its real and, honestly, far more profound message about suffering and about restoration. Yeah, when we think of the Transfiguration, this is the picture in all our minds. Jesus up on a mountain with his inner circle, and he suddenly just shines, a divine, otherworldly light. It's an absolutely spectacular and unforgettable moment, no doubt about it. But what if that incredible light is really just a supporting detail? What if the real message is hidden in all the other clues around it? The location, the people who show up, even what they're talking about. Let's do some digging. To really solve this, you have to understand that nothing, and I mean nothing, in this scene is random. Every single element is a deliberate nod, a reference, a clue that's rooted deep in the Old Testament. It's all designed to send a very, very specific message to the disciples. Okay, so clue number 1 is the light itself. Think about it. When Moses came down from Mount Sinai, his face was shining because he'd been in God's presence. It was a reflected glory. But the Gospels are super clear that Jesus' light was radiating from within him, and that distinction is absolutely critical. Moses reflected glory. Jesus is the source of glory. He is the radiance of the glory of God. So that brings us to the mountain itself. To get what's really happening here, we have to try and see this scene through the eyes of a first-century Jew. They wouldn't just see a cool miracle. No way. They would immediately recognize a deliberate reenactment of one of the most important events in their entire history, God's appearance on Mount Sinai. And when you put the evidence side by side, the parallels are they're undeniable. Look at the timing. Both events happen after 6 days. The location? A high mountain. Jesus brings 3 witnesses. Moses brought 3 leaders. You have a glorious light, a divine cloud, the Shekinah, the visible sign of God's presence. And of course, Moses himself, the lawgiver, shows up. This isn't a coincidence, folks. It's a pattern, and it's on purpose. And this whole Sinai connection gets even deeper when you look at what they were actually talking about up there on the mountain. Because what they discussed and how the disciples reacted, that's what reveals the true purpose of this entire event. And here it is, a massive, massive clue. Luke's gospel tells us that Moses and Elijah were talking with Jesus about his upcoming departure. Now, in the original Greek, the word used there for departure is, you guessed it, Exodus. They were literally discussing the new Exodus that Jesus, the new Moses, was about to lead. An escape, not from Egypt, but from sin and death. So this brings us to Peter. You know, his offer to build 3 tents is often painted as this bumbling, confused reaction from a guy who just didn't get it. But what if it was actually the most biblically intelligent thing he could have possibly said in that moment? Let's just follow Peter's logic for a second. He's seeing all the Sinai clues, the mountain, the cloud, the glory, Moses himself. He knows his scriptures. So what happened right after God met Israel on Sinai? Well, the very next thing they did was build a tabernacle, a tent to house his presence. So Peter's offer to build tents, it wasn't confusion at all. It was a perfectly logical, scripturally literate response to the divine drama playing out right in front of him. And right at that moment, just as Peter is making this incredible connection, the whole event reaches its climax. The cloud of God's presence surrounds them, and a voice speaks, giving the ultimate testimony. The voice speaks one powerful sentence. And this isn't just some random declaration. No, this is like a divine closing argument, pulling from the entire history of Israel to make its case about who Jesus is. And what's just absolutely stunning is how the case is made. The Father's statement is a mashup. It quotes from all 3 sections of the Hebrew Bible. My beloved Son, that's from the writings. With whom I am well pleased, that's from the prophets. And that final command, listen to him, that's straight from the law given to Moses. God himself uses the entire Old Testament to put a divine exclamation point on Jesus' identity. So you've got Moses, you've got Elijah, and God the Father himself, all confirming who Jesus is. You'd think the disciples would have had it all figured out, right? Well, not exactly. As they were walking back down the mountain, they were still deeply confused about one major thing. And this is the key to everything. Their confusion wasn't about Jesus' identity. They got it. He was the Messiah. Their problem was with his mission. How could this glorious, divine Son,
the one who literally shines with the light of heaven, also be someone who had to suffer and die. It didn't compute. It didn't fit their expectations.
See, their expectations were all shaped by this prophecy of the day of the Lord. They were laser focused on the good part, the glorious restoration, the judgment on all the bad guys. But they were kind of skipping over a critical prerequisite that the prophets also mentioned, that first, God would have to turn the hearts of his people back to him. And that leads us right to the final resolution. The core lesson, the Transfiguration, was meant to teach the disciples and, well, to teach us. It reveals the true path to that restoration they were so desperately waiting for.
The disciples were expecting a Messiah who would fix the world by overthrowing their enemies. But the Transfiguration revealed the real path. Glory was going to come through suffering. The mission wasn't to restore the world by force, but to first restore the human heart to God by overcoming sin and death on the cross. And that right there is the real message of the Transfiguration. The dazzling light wasn't just a sneak peek of future glory. It was a confirmation that the one who had to suffer and die was in fact the glorious source of all life. It taught that true, lasting restoration for the whole world has to begin with the spiritual restoration of the human heart.
So that leaves us with a pretty provocative question, doesn't it? If the path to restoring the world, to healing all the brokenness we see, truly begins with the quiet, internal restoration of the human heart, well, how does that change the way we view our role in the world today?